Greetings, what's going on? It's Mike from livemyassoff.com. And I was just listening to my internet radio station, which of course means I'm going to get hit with a copyright infringement, which is a real bummer, but how you doing? Hope you're living the dream, because if you are not living the dream, well then you know. So I'm here in Bangkok, and it looks like I'm live everywhere that I want to be. So if you're listening on Facebook, if you're listening on the Expats in Lockdown group in Facebook, or on my Facebook, or on my YouTube, or whatever, well then welcome. And what I believe is in the upper right-hand corner, or upper left, I guess, for you, is going to be the chat. So anyone who wants to, of course, ask any questions, I'm more than happy. And in fact, I really love that. The interaction is really awesome. Let me just make sure I'm not clipping too bad here. I got a little bit of voice processing on my microphone, but not a ton. So, what I wanted to do, something very similar to what I did last time, as we begin the discussion today, is to just double check on the Johns Hopkins site, because the last time we talked about this, there was well, actually, a couple of things. I want to show you the Johns Hopkins site, and I'm sure you absolutely have seen it before. But, because what else is on everyone's mind, right? But what I wanted to take a look at specifically is the numbers for Thailand. And then while that's loading up, actually, I want to show you another site that I found that I thought was quite awesome. And you may not be able to see the URL in here, but what I'll do is I'll put up... if you found this video, then there's a chance that you either just subscribe on YouTube or something like that, or you've been to live.mikes.asia. So that's really sort of the domain that I'm using for a lot of stuff that's happening on over here. But so this one is thaicovid.mikes.asia. But regardless, what I'll do is later on I'll put the URLs in the description, as well as post them online, and then on the Expat group. But this is pretty cool. The downside is that it's for Thailand only. So I know that that's a limited subset of folks. But nonetheless, I find it very interesting. What they've done is they've taken the data that's provided to them. And one of the coolest things, if you can see here, I mean, actually just do a little bit of this. Let me see if I can get a little bit more zoom, so that you can potentially see the text, because it's actually kind of small down here in the lower right. But regardless, the COVID-19 news tracker, so this is, Thailand, right? And so I'm focusing in here on Bangkok, and then you can zoom in on the individual cases. You may not be able to see this animation, but it's got a little bit of animation so that you can see that there's, various degrees of, I don't want to say emergency, but information. Let's just say that. Anyway, this one is covidtracker.5lab.co. So covidtracker.5lab.co. The scroll at the top is total cases in Thailand as of now is 1651. And new cases was 127. So the last time we were over at Dr. Johns Hopkins, we were able to view, obviously, the whole world, right? But specifically to Thailand. And the graph that was very interesting to me that I was looking at was the one that showed the daily cases for Thailand. And I was postulating that number was decreasing. The number of new cases was decreasing. Then yesterday, I heard a different number, and so I just wanted to sort of verify whether that's been increasing, decreasing, or whatever. Obviously, many of you know of this site, and certainly you can go to it for your respective countries. And I'm on a laptop that is, hardly powerful, so apologize for the speed with which this is refreshing. It's hardly refreshing, but U.S. almost at 200,000, and So once again, we're number one. hardly the number one you want to be, though, right? So we'll go up to 1650 here and find Thailand, and then what I'll do is take a look at the dailies. So that'll be sort of interesting to view and find out what the status of Thailand is. I'll tell you, I still feel more comfortable being over here because, again, I don't believe the medical system is overloaded. I don't believe that I would have a problem if I had to go to the hospital right now. And so, thank goodness, I haven't. But anyway, so there's Thailand at 1651. And we're at 42,000 total deaths globally, so that's crazy. One of the things I heard Trump say last night, or my last night, your morning, was the discussion of how the U.S. has tested 1 million people, over 1 million people. So I thought, okay, well that's pretty cool. And I guess that from the numbers that were being described, I would label the U.S. as getting our act together. How's that? I don't know if that's necessarily how you see it, but that was sort of my impression. So here's the daily decrease of Thailand. The last time we spoke, it was right here at about 111 in the previous, and then the next day we had a very favorable 91. The next day was about 109, and then for the last 2 days we went up again on the 29th, and 2 days ago we had 136. Today is the April 1st, so happy April Fool's Day. But the interesting part is that it kind of went up, but then it's also going down. So I've got my infamous fingers crossed, as they say. The other thing so again, this is the covidtracker.5lab.co, which is the display of the current ones in Bangkok. So what's sort of interesting is the granularity, and I can pretty much zoom in on where I'm living and just sort of be like, hey, so is there anyone living next door to me that's got it, and I live in the Bang Na area, so for the most part there's not a whole lot of stuff close to us. This is probably the closest thing to my condo, this little thing here, which was case number 56, and it was just simply a location. So they found an office worker in this location, for example. The patient status is still hospitalized, so I don't know whether that's as current as it can be. 21 days and they're still hospitalized. I mean, that poor person has obviously got some problems, and so that's kind of sad. However, and on the map, this black, there's supposed to be a black dot that shows up kind of where I am, but it doesn't seem to be refreshing at the rate that I would like. But anyway, so it's kind of neat if you want to just go take a look at this. Neat in the sense that, if you're into data. It's not neat that there's any sort of, bad data out there. And really all this does is, one could argue it reports bad data, but potentially good data. So anyway, I like it because it talks about, sort of the solution that's gone on. Right here, the status of the patient is unknown, but what it also talks about is them tracking, right? So it's not just like, hey, so there was this person and there's a person inside of the hospital that's recovering. So anyway, and then the other one here is this one, covid19.healthdata.org, COVID, covid19.healthdata.org is this one. And the thing that I thought was helpful with this one is the fact that there's some sad statistics. If you can see this, which is basically that, hey, so here's the number of beds that we're going to need, and here's how many we got. And so this is the shortage. So, overall, the U.S., right? So that's a drag, and then they plot the curve down here. What's nice about this is that you can go to your individual states, and so say, for example, you're in, I don't know, let's Massachusetts, for say. And the last time I looked at it, this was actually pretty good. There's no stay-at-home order, but the travel is obviously severely limited. The last time I looked at this, the projection was not that they'd have a bed shortage. So that's a little bit concerning for Massachusetts. I'm trying to think what state I went to. My buddy Marty's in Idaho. Yeah, so for example, right, in Idaho, they estimate there's going to be about 1,200 beds needed, and they got 1,800. So... and they're going to need 141 ventilators. Well, what I heard in Trump's recent discussion is that we have ventilators en masse. There's huge companies that are making huge numbers of them. And if the estimate now is that Idaho is going to need 141, well, then, okay, so we're not doing so bad. At the peak of this, they estimate that... there's going to be, and so it's sort of it's a beds thing, right? But they do talk about the numbers of humans that are going to be involved in this. They say they're going to peak on May 11th, whereas overall for the United States, and I think that was sort of what I heard the last task force report on, is that they believe there's going to be a peak April 19th. Possibly. This is sort of the average that they're going for, and then as you can see here at the top, that's the peak that they believe will occur as far as deaths per day, and then this is the at that time they believe that there's going to be less here. So there's the range, right? So, I mean, it's not, again, this is not totally awesome news. But to the point of, I believe, the doctor who's part of the task force, I believe I heard or saw him being quoted that he says there's going to be 100 to 200,000 deaths, possibly in the United States. I believe that's what I heard, and I thought, oh my goodness. So, I don't know, it was kind of nice to go to this and be like, okay, based on current data and fact, and they do update this every day, by the way, so they get more data points, and then arguably what they have at present is more accurate, if in fact the trend goes the way it goes. I mean, you could say, well, right, Mike, but that was based on... hey, Brian, what's going on? Good to see you, man. Greetings from Manhattan. Yeah, you guys are number one, huh? So that's kind of a bummer. But you could argue that sort of allows you to have the most number of resources, right? So these are my rose-colored glasses responding. To that, and so with any luck, but if you want, I mean, just out of curiosity, I also before took a look at New York, and so while the numbers for that are a bit, they're not going to shock you. Let's put it that way. You're going to be like, yes, Mike, this is the sad reality of what I heard about New York. But they believe that projected for basically the end of the summer, or the end of July, beginning of August, it's going to be about 15,000 deaths. And today, April 1st, is total deaths of 2,000. So. Sadly, it sounds like they got a big way to go, but I think they're also ahead of it. And so they're going to peak here in what they believe to be 9 days. Well, it's actually still March 31st there, so 10 days. So in less than 2 weeks, apparently New York is going to get some sort of peak. That's when they believe the initial, the absolute maximum peak. Obviously there's a range. They believe that may occur on the 11th or the 12th, with 821 is the absolute 827 on the 10th. So anyway, covid19.healthdata.org. I like it in the sense that there is some data and fact. Opinion is interesting, but I don't believe it's necessarily... It can make some people really go bonkers. They don't have non-essential services closed, so I assume what that means is you can like go to the mall and buy a pair of sneakers. There's no stay-at-home order. They did close the schools. Travel is severely limited. One could argue, well, no kidding, that's because all of the airlines that are doing anything, and they go to Florida. But here's the good news with Florida. As much as you might hear reports that they're complaining, oh my God, we're getting filled with New Yorkers who are taking up all of our stuff, apparently they're doing okay. This estimate says that they're going to need, on the peak day, which for them, they believe, is approximately May 3rd, or could be May 5th or 6th, they're going to need 13,000 beds, and they got 20,000. So... and just so you know, this number here in purple, it includes the ICU. The ICU is rolled up into that. So non-ICU beds would be approximately 11,300. And they've got a total of 20,000, including the ICU beds of 1,700 ICU beds. So they're going to need 1,594 ventilators. What I don't believe that this provides is the data on, hey, here's how many ventilators we currently got. I forgot. So I have to use, actually, I have to go to March 31st if I want the most current data. They're doing about 12 deaths per day, and that looks like it's going to go up to, about 10x, with a possible maximum here of about 280. So, anyway, have a look at this if you'd like. I find data and fact to be very helpful for my life. Missy says, who's very familiar... Good to see you again, Missy. Thanks again for stopping by, Brian, and always good to see you, Missy. She's very familiar with Sanibel Island, and even as a kid, I want to say, boy, when I was like 8, 9, 10, maybe even earlier than that, her and her family were going down there. Sanibel Island in Florida on the west coast, near Sarasota, Tampa, St. Pete. Gracie and I went there. We were there for, I want to say we only went to Sanibel Island for one day. We drove down there. But boy, I'll tell you, the west coast of Florida, Gracie and I, that is our spot, man. We love that part of the U.S. She hasn't been to Maui with me, or Kauai, and I'm sure that she would love those too. But it's a little steep in cost. So anyway, that's not necessarily a good option for us, which is Maui. Florida, on the other hand, unless you're like, oh my God, I gotta live in Naples, real estate's kind of expensive there, but I don't think that's a requirement, really. Anyway, she says it's now passed an edict that no new check-ins on the island will be allowed as of last weekend. Yeah, they've got it's a huge vacation spot, right? And so it's interesting that they would do that. I can understand why they do that, right? Because in Thailand, if I go somewhere, then the resort takes a copy of my passport, and then effectively what they're supposed to do, they are supposed to take that data and report it to the government, the immigration department, via the TM30, which is, hey, I've got a foreigner staying on my land, and here's where they are. And so that doesn't occur in the United States, because heaven forbid we give up any civil liberties, and I can appreciate that. So they're not going to be able to know where you are, and so I can understand why they would do it for that reason. Additionally, if they're like, look, stay at home. But as noted from that graph, right, it doesn't look like Florida has said, hey, so we're going to make you stay at home. And so, as a state, they haven't said that. I've heard some complaints about Florida saying, oh my God, they're still letting kids, roam around the beach. Whereas in California, the beaches are closed. It's certainly in San Diego. I've had buddies report that, so like Mission Bay, like it's just closed off. And here, as you can see in Florida, the non-essential services are not closed. So I assume that means you can go to a Walmart that's not... you could say that there's some essential stuff that's happening at Walmart. You can get like gauze and, first aid equipment, even if they don't have a grocery department. This green juice I'm drinking, it's like a vegetable combo. It's a little bit too sweet. It probably has like way too much apple juice in it, but I recommend it. It's pretty good. I'm trying to get my veggies in, but anyway. So it looks like Florida's in pretty good shape. But what I wanted to do, I want to get back to what Missy was saying about. Hey, Isaac, good to see you, man. Good to see you. Followed you over from Rike's live stream. Sawadee krap. Sawadee my krap. Thank you. Glad you're here. Missy also says, however, someone posted that the line outside the ice cream shop was ridiculously long. So, with any luck, those people are standing a fair distance apart and or not coughing or sneezing on each other pre-ice cream. So, I don't know, man. Some of that behavior, I judge it. And Missy says also that no more tourists are allowed on the island. So I guess that makes sense. I don't know if they have I'm sure I could Google it and find maybe a picture of Florida state troopers that are potentially not allowing people to go in. Maybe they check your ID, which is interesting too. I often thought about that when I was living in Coronado, because when I was living in Coronado, the ID that I had was my driver's license had my address, my mailing address on it. And it wasn't a P.O. box, it was an actual physical address where I received mail. And the reason I kept it that way and didn't have my actual, where I sleep every night address on there was from a suggestion I got from the police officer that helped me with my identity theft case. He said, look, it's probably a good idea since, because I had only just moved to Coronado. And he said, it's not a bad idea to have an address where you're getting the majority of your mail that's not your house, just from a safety perspective. And again, he's a policeman, right? So he's like, worst case scenario, what could possibly happen to this person? Let me give them some advice that could potentially prevent that. So, but I say that because, if I ever had to come over the bridge and they were like, okay, look, you can't get on the island, show us an ID that shows where you live, then they'd be like, okay, well, you go back up to La Jolla then, because you don't have anything that says you live here. So that said, I'm sure I could have discussed my way around it, but that brings up a good point. Missy says they're also trying to prevent non-Cape Cod residents from crossing the bridge, and what she means is the Sagamore or the Bourne Bridge, both of which are what cross into, I guess, technically the island of Cape Cod, because there is the river that sort of goes between Cape Cod and the rest of Massachusetts. She says too many New Yorkers are heading to their summer homes to get away from New York City. It's funny, when I was a kid, like, Cape Cod was the place where you had a summer home. And then I think in about the 80s, maybe late 80s, it became a lot more common for people to have permanent residences down there. Because I believe at the time, interest rates were so high, it was like, look, dude, if I'm going to take out a loan for this place, I'm living there. I can't do this whole second home thing on 12% interest on a house. So I don't know whether that was the motivating factor. But I remember as a kid, I would go down there with neighbors. Mark Ellis was a buddy of mine from high school, grade school. And his folks had a house in Hingham, where I grew up, and then they had a summer house. They had a getaway house, and it was interesting because it was such a summer house that there was no heat, and they would have it all boarded up, when they would go down there. And if you don't know, what's very common in areas like New England in areas that have a winter, a very specific winter. Many of you are from the U.S., but good to see you, man. Good to see you, Sean. Right on. Let me get the peace sign fully in there. Thanks for coming by. I love the Cape as well. The very common thing is to begin your summer on Labor Day and end it to begin your summer on Memorial Day, which is traditionally the last Sunday, May 28th, 29th-ish. Last Monday in May, which is then traditionally a pretty big holiday. So that begins your summer. You then go to Labor Day, which is, the first weekish in September, and that's the summer in New England. And if you get a few times, hey Teresa, good to see you. If you get a week or so ahead of time, if you're like, oh dude, we opened, this is very common. I'll never forget this as a kid. my buddy's parents, it would be like, hey, we're opening the pool this weekend. Right. And I mean, after moving to Southern California, if I were to hear that, I mean, I would probably flash back to my childhood. But as living in Southern California, if someone said, oh, we're opening the pool this weekend, I'm like, oh, what did you do? Completely drain it and like redo the gunite or something? You're opening it. Why in the world would you close your pool? It's such a pain in the neck. You don't do that in Southern California. You don't do that in a lot of areas, pretty much in Florida, too. Although northern Florida kind of got too cold for me, too. That's why I like the southern West Coast. I love the Keys. I fell in love with the Keys when I was about 17. And so a few years back. But, yeah, that was... it's interesting because when Missy brings up Sanibel Island, there are a lot of places... and I mean, again, I'm a traveler, right? And I'm basically permanently here on vacation. So, we go to places where you can look around and say, oh, I bet the majority of their economy comes from tourism. If you don't know, 20% of the GDP in Thailand comes from tourism. That's a lot. And then and in fact, I don't know if that tourism bucket, I don't know if that includes everyone in the travel industry. I'm sure there's some sort of overlap, like a Venn diagram of it, but what is the estimate? There's like, I don't know, 380 million people that work in the airline industry, like everywhere. And I don't know whether that means they include everyone who works at the Newport News stop at the airport or whatever. I assume that they include everyone who works in TSA in that. So, yeah, it's a massive number. Right on, Sean. Good night, sweet dreams. Indeed, it is, I want to say 9:30 p.m. on the East Coast. So thanks for stopping by, man. Really appreciate it. It's really cool. We've rekindled our communication. That's kind of neat. I literally have not talked to Sean since probably, I want to say like maybe 1988. Maybe 80, yeah, because I mean, it would have been, basically around graduation. But then I think, 1 or 2 years afterwards, I was still living back in Boston. So it was like, yeah, I would still hang out with buddies that I graduated from high school with, but it's been a long time. So the other thing that I wanted to take a look at, so the other thing that I did a few days ago was notify you of the notices I get from the STEP program or the State Department. And they come in ACS BKK simply because I registered saying, hey, I'm going to be living in Bangkok. So if you got any updates with that, let me know. Now, what's interesting about this, specifically to Phuket, and while I don't live in Phuket, I definitely have friends in Phuket. I've been to Phuket. I love Phuket a lot. Me and my business partner had a killer time several years ago in Phuket. And Gracie and I have been to Phuket. We haven't been to the super touristy area of Patong. But we were sort of on the other side. If you Google Phuket and then go over to the right a little bit east, there's this little place called Coconut Island. Highly recommend it. Very cool, very chill, and pretty reasonable, actually. You got to take a little long-tail boat to get over there. And anyway, I'll put a link to my video when I finish up this video. I'll put a link to one of the videos that Gracie and I did when we were in Coconut Island. That was really cool. But what's interesting about this is it's global level 3. So the highest level I got probably about a week ago from the State Department was level 4. And that was like, look, dude, you got to get home. And so this has pretty much been their goal with these notifications is to notify two things. To notify people of what the heck is going on, meaning, hey, by the way, Phuket is, putting in a curfew. So, if you're going to go down there, or if you are down there and you don't know about it, because, I mean, look, let's face it, there's plenty of news that happens, and it's a lot of it's in Thai. Gratefully, there's been enough expats, and there's been enough English-speaking desire in this country for, decades now, so that there have been some long-standing English-related blogs and newspapers and that sort of thing. Bangkok Post has always been in English. Anyway, the point is that, you don't necessarily get your news. So the nice thing about signing up for STEP is that, you get the news here, and it's, so here's what's interesting. But in the past, like literally before January, I would get notifications from STEP. I would get notifications from the State Department about once a month. And they'd be like, hey, by the way, there's this like really weird thing going on in Malaysia. Stay away from this area, and if you have problems, here's the local embassy, right? Or, sadly, when there was that bomb in Bangkok several years ago, there's like, hey, look, there was a bomb in Bangkok, stay away. And so you get it like once a month. Now I'm getting these emails once a day. And usually at night. I usually get it at about 6 p.m. Bangkok time. So they talk about how the Tourism Authority of Thailand, TAT, they announced that the Phuket province, all residents and tourists remain in their residence from 8 p.m. to 3 a.m. Beaches are closed, and then and the reason they say specifically walking street is because that is arguably what a lot of people think about when they say Phuket. If if you're in the U.S. and you're like, hey, dude, I went to Phuket, then a lot of times people will envision you going to Patong Beach and going to Walking Street down there, because it's a very, very popular area. And then they give you the information specifically on Phuket and where you can go to the Tourism Authority of Thailand, as well as the COVID-19 website for CDC. Additionally, this has been a very common thing that they say to everybody. And, obviously they're updating you on the key points of COVID. And wash your hands, at least 60% alcohol, international travel to stay home. But then this is another thing too, and I'll show this to you now, and then I'll show you the ones I've been getting over the past few days. Flights out of Thailand. For the most part, they're like, look, dude, if you're a U.S. citizen and you're on vacation, get back, or you're not going to be able to get back. And I mean, unless you've been under a rock, you've been inundated with news about how there are less and less flights everywhere. Like if you're making an investment right now in Spirit Airlines, then you've been asleep. Every one of them is tanking. And so they're like, look, you might as well get back now. Get back to the U.S. before you can't. And I want to show you, and then they give you the information about Thailand. So, let me do this. I want to go back to a couple of the other ones that I've been getting from the State Department, because what's been common in these is that they've shown a list of the outbound flights. And this was one I got the other day, and it was basically saying, look, there's border closures. So, if you think you're like just going to walk over the border into Laos, or you're going to go over to Myanmar, then forget it. Bottom line is if you don't live over here, if you're not an expat, get home, because there are still flights available, but not much. And this is the thing that they've been giving us almost daily now, which is like, this is the flights available out of Thailand, and here are so this is it. Like, you can basically cruise from Bangkok through Doha. You can go up through using Lufthansa. You can go to Frankfurt. You can go through Korean Airlines, and then you can hop through Japan, and you would either go through Narita or Haneda. Haneda. I think that's right. The two big airports in Japan. So you've pretty much got 3 options over the Atlantic and 1 option over the Pacific, and there's only 1 airline that's going. EVA is one that I normally fly a lot, and they've said, forget it, we're not doing anything. In fact, if I go to their website, the next flight I can book, I think, isn't until, I want to say May 1st, because we're in a state of emergency here in Thailand, and for the most part, that means that we're not supposed to be doing anything until April 30th. And they also have the thing where it's like, look, if you fly into Thailand, you got to have a ton of documentation just to be able to get through. So just wanted to make sure I didn't miss any chats. But this thing, so you've got this number, right? Chiang Mai, unlike in the Philippines, where you cannot fly domestically, as of the 30th, on 2 days ago here, at least you could cruise from Chiang Mai up to Bangkok, and then from Bangkok you could get out. Excuse me. But that's sort of an interesting graph. Now, if we go back, so that was the 30th when I got that email. So if we go back to, say, the 27th, then you'll see how many flights there were and how many there are not. And again, Smart Traveler Enrollment Program. If you don't know what STEP is and you're a traveler, I highly recommend you sign up for it, because you never know when something like this is going to happen. For example, on this day they said, hey, by the way, like, you can't get buses. So if you want to get down, like if you want to get back up to the province or something, if you've got a house up there, you've got a family, you know, you're married to someone who's up there, forget it. And so it's good to know that. So and then, so on this day, this is the email that I got on March 27th. So last Thursday, they let us know that as far as flights out of Thailand, the previous day, there were 53 out. Now, you saw the email that I got last night, and there's 5. Okay? So there went from 53 on the 26th in Thailand, down to 46, 53 to 46. So you're like, okay, well, that's no big deal. I can still get out. But again, it's only because the only airlines that are flying out, so I mean, American, they're done. United, they're done. Delta, absolutely not happening. Qatar, Lufthansa, and JAL are and Korean Airlines, I think, are the only ones that are still going out. And as you can see, you know, they've got one, like, you know, basically each day of the week. As of last night, or as of the other day, the 30th, that's not happening anymore. Right now, if you want to get out of Thailand, you better get some oars, because you know, it's April 1st, and so as of today, I mean, pretty much game over. So they're saying that these are actual weekly flights, so there's a total of 29. But basically, you know, and then Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. But as of Saturday and Sunday, ANA is done. All Nippon is like, you know, look, dude, forget it. So that would be, I think, April 5th and 6th here. 4th and 5th, sorry. And then it's not happening any longer. ANA, and they're a great airline. JAL will take you through there, and they're a Star Alliance partner. Korean, the cool thing about Korean is it's very easy to use your Delta points if you guys want to, if you have the massive need to get the hell out of Thailand. And I can tell you that transiting through Incheon is one of the best experiences ever. I would say that Singapore, Kanji, they have the best airport in the whole entire world. I have not been to Dubai. But however, there's pretty much quite a bit of agreement that the Singapore airport is epic. So, but you can't go through there anymore. You can't get into Singapore. You can't even transit through Singapore. And I don't know what's occurring in the airport in South Korea right now, in Seoul. But it would be pretty interesting to try and find some data on that. Lufthansa, the cool thing about Lufthansa is they fly directly into San Diego. So you could hop through Frankfurt and then from Frankfurt go right into San Diego. So that would be cool. So you wouldn't have to necessarily go into LAX, which is what many of us do in that part of the world. If you're from Southern California or even Vegas, a lot of people will be like, yeah, I got to drive to LAX because either I drive to LAX and leave the country from LAX and come over here to Southeast Asia, or I end up, basically flying through LAX. They'll check my luggage in Las Vegas or San Diego or whatever, but the first hop on my flight is this silly 1 hour hop up to LAX. Doha is an interesting way to transit. The downside to this list here is that Emirates bailed out a while ago. I was looking at flights on Emirates to go back to Boston, and it's basically one hop. You cruise through Doha or DXB, Dubai, and that would be pretty cool. All in, it takes about 23 hours of air time, of flight time, which means, you've basically thrown away 36 hours of your life to fly. It's halfway across the world, right? So anyway, that's what's going on there. I also wanted to share If you don't know what ASEAN is, it's the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, which is a bunch of them over here, right? And so all of the ones that you would say look at the South China Sea and say, okay, all of these are on there, but also below that too. So anyway, the majority ones that you would know of would be, Singapore, Thailand, Vietnam, Cambodia, all of the ones, the Philippines as well. Philippines is one of the founding members of the ASEAN network. And it's also APEC with the exception of China. But the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, all in, it's approximately 600 million people, of course, because India and Malaysia have a ton. But to give you sort of an example of, what the U.S. is doing globally still, since the outbreak began, the U.S. government has provided approximately $18 million for the ASEAN member states. Now, that's, that gets divvied up, but that goes pretty darn quick, because the Philippines is in deep doo-doo right now. They have a lockdown, and there is probably a debate like 50-50. People are like, okay, I need to stay inside. I don't want to spread the virus. I'm going to lock down. That's fine. Actually, probably more than 50% of the people are, on the other hand, are like, look, dude, we got to get out and we got to work. Like, we have to work so we can earn money, so we can buy groceries tonight. And I'll tell you, man, the people that were like kind of middle class, if you will, in the Philippines, I would submit to you that they're the ones that are really suffering the most. Because the wealthy, of course, have, the minute this like got to be known, they just called up the people that help them live, their caretakers and that sort of thing, and they're like, look, take the SUV, drive to the mall and fill it with as much food, come back, empty it all out in the pantry or the garage, and then drive back again. And do that until the garage is filled floor to ceiling with enough water for us to handle our lives for the next 2 years or 2 months or whatever. So that's the wealthy, right? Then there's the middle class that have moved to the city and have a job, but don't have a whole lot of physical storage space, right, for a ton of food, and work. And, then maybe they have a month of savings, but they don't have a whole lot. And then there's the people that a lot of people would label as poor, or people that are living, in the province, right? And they got a farm. They're like, look, dude, we got more food. Like, in other words, we're the ones that bring the food to you people that don't have food right now. So I'm telling you what, man, they're sitting really pretty. And if you want to see what the farm looks like, and Brian says, EVA, best premium economy out there, worth the extra cash. Absolutely agree, my friend. I completely agree with that. Oh, and I apologize. I missed some chats by you guys. So Brian says, if I had to make the choice between getting in a foxhole between New York City and Bangkok, he'd be over here. So he'd be over here. And I think Brian was also the one that posted. We were like chatting back and forth on one of the Facebook groups that I'm in, and they were talking about the existence of God and that sort of thing. They say, yeah, if you're in a foxhole, right? Everyone believes in God. God, get me out of this one. Jim Jets, hi Mike, long-time subscriber, first-time commenter. Hey buddy, thanks a lot. Is there any chance you could extend your 30-day visa and stay in Thailand? To me, that would be the safer option. There absolutely is. In fact, if my 30-day, extend your visa 30 days. Now, again, it depends on what kind of visa you're talking about, but I'll assume it's an actual visa, like a sticker that you've gotten from a immigration department, either a consulate or an embassy. And the question becomes, can you extend that 30 days? You absolutely can extend it 30 days, especially if you have, you got to show them that you live here. You can't be like, oh yeah, I don't have a place to live. I just got this backpack. No. If you're going to expect the immigration department to say, yes, you can stay in our country another 30 days, I don't believe you're going to have to show them that you have health insurance unless it is an OA visa. And part of the sort of retirement visa package was, hey, so you old folks, meaning if you're over 50, you guys that come over here and you want to stay, basically long stay visa for a year, well, then we expect you to have some insurance. And there's like this list of Thai insurance companies that the government has vetted and they trust. And, you could debate whether there's, like money being paid at the back door, whatever. It doesn't matter. The point is that all of the companies that they chose are really only the ones that I'd go with anyway. And they're like, look, you got to have this, certain amount of outpatient and this certain amount of inpatient insurance. Fine. So you get that. What I'm hearing, though, is people that extend even tourist visas, so not a long stay visa, one where you don't need to prove that you have insurance, as long as you show them some degree of documentation that says, look, this is where I'm staying, and this is where I'm staying for the next 30 days. So some guys have been able to go to their hotel and say, look, I need a receipt for this hotel. And I even watched this one video where the guy was right on the border from Myanmar, and kind of a backpacker, and he was in a hotel that he just he pays him cash, so he probably pays him like 500, 600, 700, 800 baht a day, or he paid him for like 10 days up front, and he just gives him cash, and they give him a key. There's no receipt, so they had to like handwrite something, I guess. But I mean, if you're a Marriott, it's very easy to go down to the front desk and say, hey, give me a receipt. In fact, the way that I got my Bangkok bank account years ago was I was staying at the Marriott when there was still a Marriott in Pattaya, and I got over to immigration. I was filling out all the forms, and then the people that help you fill out the forms, they said, well, hey, you're going to need a receipt from where you're staying. So, like, do you have a lease? Do you have a hotel? And I just went, so I drove back to the hotel. I said, look, I need a receipt that says I'm staying here. And I had only had a reservation for like 3 or 4 nights, but they gave me that, and then I gave that to immigration, and they said, okay, we will give you, at the time, what was basically a TM-28, we will give you, in addition to proof of residency, we will give you this piece of paper that says, yes, the immigration department believes you're living where you're living, and we sort of vouch for you staying here permanently. I also had a 1-year visa, okay? So with that, I then went to the bank, and they said, okay, we'll give you a bank account. Previously to that, I went to Capricorn, and that was probably about in 2012 or 2013. They did not ask for that, but I did have a 1-year visa, so they were like, okay, we assume you're going to stay here. What's your address? And I just simply gave them my address of my hotel at the time, which no longer exists. The physical building's there, but it's not a Marriott anymore. So, yeah. So, and the reason that I bring that up is Jim Jets says that would probably be the safer option, versus New York City. Again, New York City is a big place, right? But I can tell you that my experience in New York City has not been pleasurable, and that was years ago, okay? And I just didn't feel welcome there, and it wasn't my kind of city, and I'm not a city guy. But if you've ever watched any of my videos, you know that I've said several times before, I'm not a city guy, but I love Bangkok. And if you watch one of my recent videos where I went to the hospital simply for an earache, I love Bangkok because in less than an hour, I had exceptionally awesome medical care for, no money out of pocket because I have insurance, but it would have been $51. I mean, it was amazing. And then Brian says, best premium economy in EVA Airlines. And he says he's looking at June. I assume you mean June to come over here. I've got reservations for August to go back to Boston. And the reason I was going to do that, there's a couple of reasons. One is that there's no way I'm going back to Boston unless it's hot and humid like it is here. I'm not going back to Boston in November unless, of course, I have to. But when I choose to travel the world, I go back and see my parents at least once a year. And the last time I was there was in October, but that was simply to kind of check in with them and say, hey, look, so here's the deal. My job is annoying. I'm going to go live in Thailand. And so flew back home and, yes, I also stored some stuff in my room there, but I also, talked with my parents about, because it's a big deal. It's a big move, right? And so okay, cool. So I'm caught up. Awesome. This chat thing that I have here is going to work pretty well right now that I don't have a whole lot of people that come in on the live stream. I get the majority of my views on these videos on YouTube after. So usually I'll get like 20 or so people that'll come in and out, and they'll bop in and out, and then, a few of them will make comments. So it's not so bad, and that's why I have it actually right there. That's why I have it right there, so others can see it, because I am streaming on YouTube and Facebook and Instagram and Pinterest and, a whole bunch of those things. So I like to give the folks the ability to see the other comments, even though when it does show up as it does right now, for example, and all of the Facebook comments have then since scrolled, it's kind of a repeat, right? If you're only watching this on YouTube and you're watching this back on YouTube, then they're like, okay, great, Mike. So now I see the comments on the right and I see the comments here. But what's interesting, the streaming solution that I use, if I were to go to my YouTube page right now, obviously these guys are commenting and reading and that sort of thing, because there's the video and then there's the chat section on the left or the right, on the right or below. It depends on whether you're mobile or not. But on the playback, for some reason, even though I have it checked saying include comments in playback, 50% of the time they don't show up, and it says this video can't show comments. I'm like, why? I said it could, so who knows? I also don't get all the notifications that I'd like, even though I've checked, I've hit subscribe and I checked the bell that says all. I still don't get them all. So I don't know what the deal is with that. But you know what I'm going to do, actually, is I'm going to go over to... let me see. I want to make sure that I got through all the emails that I wanted to share with you guys, because it was really, these notifications we're getting from the State Department or the embassy, pretty much. It's a pretty clear indication that, like, look, you better get back here to the U.S. But again, if we go back to the silly John Hopkins site, right, then, my argument is, look, here's Thailand. Sorry, hold on. Pardon me. Here's Thailand. It's 1650, and yeah, we've got 10 deaths, and that sucks, right? But it's a lot less than the U.S. And again, yeah, Mike, there's more people in the U.S., so there's going to be more deaths, so there's going to be more. But you're looking at right now 188,000 people were diagnosed, right? And this will refresh here too. The numbers that you're seeing right now are back to Thailand. So this is the total number in the U.S. with 3,900 deaths. And the cool thing is it also says we're at the last page I was at. Now the cool thing is that 7,000 people have recovered out of the 88,500. But I would submit that of the people that are confirmed, it's not like they're in dire straits. There are a number of people, of course, that are hospitalized, and it's having a huge impact on the medical system, And then the daily increase for the U.S., let's blow that up a little bit. That's hardly going down. But as we saw before from this page, right, U.S. is going to peak probably in, mid-April. So even though Dr. Trump thinks it's going to be over by Easter, that would be convenient for him and the Catholics. That's not going to happen. It's going to peak on that day. And as you can see, the Delta here wasn't so bad, and then bam. So something happened on the 26th, and also something happened on the 31st. So it seems like about every 5 days. Now, again, this number is also going up because we're testing a lot more people. So, one could argue, look, dude, there were this many people that were infected back here. We just didn't have the ability to test them. So now that we're, testing them. Now, one of the things that, I don't know if you guys ever watch foreign reports. There's some great news channels that are coming out of, that come out of Japan, or that come out of Korea, for example. Their English is stellar, right? So anyway, so I just want to pop over to South Korea briefly. There is a lot of chatter about how, hey, we should really be doing it the way the South Koreans are. And I can kind of understand why they're doing that. Apparently, their isolation and their lockdowning, it seems to be very well received by the general population, but people are using their brain and doing it. Now, they've got 10,000, and they've got 162 deaths. So, that's 1%, right? But to the daily increase thing, you want to talk about being ahead. I mean, I'm like, okay, yeah, let's look. I mean, you get pretty excited on this day, but it could absolutely go back up, right? I mean, you were like, oh my God, and then woof, thank goodness, and then all of a sudden the 20th or the 3rd of March shows up, and you start thinking, okay, we're bumming out. But I mean, this is clearly a decrease. And I mean, there were these days, I remember hearing the reports, there were the days that, on the 23rd, for example, 0 new cases. Okay, well, how many did they test, right? But, obviously they were testing people long before, like, it really started to go bonkers. And for them, that was basically mid-February where they were really starting to figure it out, saying, hey, wait, we got an issue here. We got 3 people going on here, and then the next day they got 4. So they started testing like crazy. But I mean, they're, way ahead of time. Oh, the one final thing that we should probably take a look at is China. Because, there's a lot of chatter about the fact that they're ahead of everybody. They got this thing figured out. They welded doors shut to keep people in. And like I mentioned before in another, live stream, I got a buddy who lives in China, Guangzhou, and he works at Alibaba. And, about a month ago, actually more than that, probably about 6 weeks ago, just sends me a random message on LinkedIn and says, hey, so how's it going over there, And I responded with, I don't know, I mean, everything's pretty good. Gracie and I just went to the beach and, we vacationed, we went to an island, everything's going fine. And then, his report was, oh yeah, I've been indoors forever. And everyone's, no one can go out. He sends me a picture of basically the downtown area where he was living at the time. And the streets are empty. They're bare. They're basically like they are now, if you've seen Rike's channel, the photos that he's taken of, downtown Cebu. So, look, and, I'm not going to debate. I'm not going to get into some weird thing about, but the only reason it's decreased so much is because China's lying to us. All right, well, whatever. But at the end of the day, someone who I actually respect quite a bit is Bill Gates and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, who have given an enormous amount of money to fight this thing. He reports almost every single day. He makes a reference to China and how China's ahead of it, and they don't have as many cases, and their cases are dwindling. And I would submit that he's not just simply like going to a website like this and then reporting on it. I bet he's got folks potentially on the ground, as they say, in China. So I'm submitting that the data on China, whether this is exact or not, I would submit to you that this trend is actually probably pretty accurate. And so, and because of this spike here, which is 15,000 in one day, then you go over here to this 576, and well, yeah, it looks really tiny, right? So it'd be kind of nice if we could get that anomaly out of there and have some other, or zoom in and be able to say, because, I mean, you go out here, and you're like, yeah, dude, look, I mean, you may say that, China's ahead of this, and they're good, and they can go outside and all of this. Well, really, I mean, they've been increasing their numbers at the same rate that Thailand is. And Thailand is, I'm going to put this label out there, but I believe it, taking it seriously and complying. They're basically, I mean, oh my God, the curve is so down, they got nothing going on. Well, what they got is they got new cases at the rate that Thailand has new cases. So if that's any indication of where Thailand will be, ideally, it's not going to get any more new cases than like about 100-ish every day. So that's another reason why I'm pretty psyched that I'm over here. I'm psyched that I'm over here because heaven forbid there's going to be... oh yeah, so Colette said, and Colette is amazing. She's like my younger sister, and she used to work for me. She used to work with me, let's just say that. Yeah, I was her boss on paper, but you support the folks that you work with, right? Colette says she caught you live too, and be safe. So that means she caught me on Instagram. So I am doing Instagram. I'm not quite sure whether I last more than an hour on Instagram. I think it just dumps out. Their RTMP ingest only, I think, it lasts 1 hour. And then Brian mentions that we all know that China isn't reporting factually. Yeah, I mean, I'm willing to adopt that. But are they reporting 1% of what's going on? In other words, when it peaked at 15,000, were they like, oh my God, we got to stop reporting that, and they only have 150? I don't know. All I can tell you is this is the data that I see online. I'm going to go to the John Hopkins website because I trust that. That said, who knows if they have, again, boots on the ground in China that are verifying that? I mean, is it a news site with such integrity, right, that they check 3 sources to make sure? So I get that. I get it, Brian. Eddie says China not truthful. Shocking. Yeah. Well, you know what? Look, I mean, I'm not saying that 100% of the data that we get from the U.S. is truthful either, right? I mean, there's some padding that occurs with everything. I mean, if you ask me after I just got back on the boat, I say, well, I caught a fish. It was this big. Okay, so, I've told little white lies. I've told big dark lies too, but I haven't in a long time. But I exaggerate or. The marketing that I put out as an individual is not free from embellishment. Let's just say that. So, Colette says she mentioned this on Instagram Live, which again is good. The State Department should be suggesting people stay put wherever they are. I completely agree. Realize, though, that the State Department notifications that I get are ones where they have data from the U.S. And a lot of times what they're saying is they're like, look, for example, let's say you get arrested in Thailand. Now, you can't just say, oh, American citizen, call the embassy, call the State Department. They're going to, no. I mean, one of the things that they always reference is the fact that, look, you're in this other country. You kind of got to refer to their laws, and therefore they're going to point you to the data that country is spitting out. So, while I agree that the State Department in the U.S. Should be doing that, they can also give a suggestion that says, hey, you should probably sit down and not go outdoors here in this country. But to be fair, they do say, hey, look, pay attention to the local ones. And absolutely, if there is any indication that a province or an island, Phuket, or a region or an entire country for that matter, that is saying, hey, look, don't go outdoors, then they share that. One of the things that they absolutely do encourage every U.S. citizen or permanent resident to do is get the heck back home, unless you live here, right? I mean, if you're a tourist and if you're a temporary resident, I believe that is sort of the common thing that they're saying. Saying, look, dude, if you're normally over there anyway, you should probably cruise home, because look, we got no more flights left. And it's interesting, Colette. I don't know whether I have the aspect ratio such that on Instagram you can actually see what I'm doing. I believe you gotta, you can't do it the phone way. I believe you got to do it sort of the 16:9 to get the whole thing. So I apologize for the Instagrammers if when I was scrolling through those websites for information you weren't able to see it. Yeah, come on, says Eddie. China, not truthful? Yeah, well, they're not the only ones. Except for golf. Absolutely. Golf is going to happen. Eddie is in Bullhead City, and Eddie is still golfing, which is good. So what's interesting about Bullhead City is I took a look at Arizona and Nevada, right, that were kind of next to there. And, they don't have a stay-in-place order. I mean, they may have in Las Vegas, but... Eddie says set up containment camps. Is that your recommendation that the State Department should do? Colette says showed your screen share for a while but quit at the hour mark. Yeah, I guess that's just the way it goes. And again, I'm not gonna email them and complain it because I'm paying so much for the service. I love when people complain, and it's a fair complaint. I love when people complain about YouTube, right? Because I've always said, if you don't like YouTube and they're not paying you enough or their algorithm isn't working for you or whatever, do this. Use your own money to host your videos and do it on Vimeo. And, then you're in charge of your video destiny, right? But I mean, 4, 5, 6, 7, 800 videos in, you're like, man, this is starting to get expensive. And there's no ad revenue coming in from this because there's not an algorithm that I also don't pay for that's doing it for me, that is bringing traffic to my website based on me doing nothing other than providing content. You could argue that is your payment, right? Because you are essentially giving YouTube this free content. huge. Mind blown, Ryan. Giving this free content. Ryan and Colette. So here's what's really cool. We've got quite a consortium of USDers here. The University of Spoiled Daughters. Which is such a joke, too, because, I mean, Colette wasn't spoiled. I mean, she was an only child, which is, of course, the best kind of child. But yeah, I always used to laugh about that. So Eddie says, Arizona governor classifies golf course like a park, so not closed yet. So the parks are still open. Interesting. Well, I mean, you could. Hey, now, trust me, you weren't in that category. Okay, I'm not going to go through the whole litany of how awesome I think you are. If you need to know anything about how awesome Colette is, simply subscribe to her channel to get in communication with her, and she can give you a copy of the recommendation letter I gave her to help her get a job. I will tell you what helped her get a job. Her brain, okay? It wasn't me. Colette absolutely earned her sysadmin stripes. I want to say, so it was funny. So she used to work in the tech support center, as did Ryan Flynn, who was here. And so I love to hire from within. Because no matter what company you're in, no matter what culture you're in, it takes a while to get it, okay? So there is a culture that is in Google, there is a culture that is in higher education in general, and then there is the culture that was USD. And UCSD had their own culture, and San Diego State had their own culture. So if you're able to hire someone that already gets it on day one, like I don't have to go through it and say, well, this is how we deal with incoming freshmen, or this is the attitude we have towards the professors here, a different sort of class of employee, right? I mean, that exists very differently in other organizations. And as I used to say quite frequently, certainly when I first got into higher education, is every other industry is called the real world, especially when I would look at my Microsoft licensing, which is like basically free if you don't know, for higher education. And I mean, if you're working for 3M, you are paying full price, man, for all those Microsoft licenses. But anyway, Colette earned her sysadmin stripes. She absolutely did. So I'm like, okay, well, she gets it, right? So she's part of the organization. She's been here before. Here's your desk, and here's your computer, and if you want more, just like let me know, and we'll figure out how to buy it. And by the way, here's a list of 100 servers that you're in charge of managing. And I think up to that point, she had managed 2. So, you know, I mean, look, she had a team of guys that also fell in love with her because they're like, oh, our little sister. Because we're all like 50, 40, 50. I think Kirk wasn't 60 yet when you started there, but anyway. University of Spoiled Dependents. Brats know no gender. That's fair. Yeah, that's good, right? And especially if you're genderless or if you're non-reporting, then yeah, spoiled dependents. I'll tell you right now, though, my impression of my experience with all of the undergrads and many grad students, but undergrads primarily, that I interfaced with, meaning classes that I helped facilitate and teach, people that I worked with, Ryan, Colette, best students on the planet, okay? Now, it was a small subset. I never lived in the dorm, so I don't know like what sort of nonsense goes on there. Streamlabs, this is my test timer response. Interesting. So I wonder how that showed up, because I have a Streamlabs account and I'm not quite sure what I did. Maybe I just like picked some random time to do a test timer thing. Streamlabs is interesting. Streamlabs is basically the pay company sort of OBS. So OBS, Open Broadcast Studio, is the open source software that I'm using right now, and many gals use. And then there's Streamlabs. So there's the Streamlabs version of OBS, right? Kind of like there's open source Linux, and then there's Red Hat, and there's SUSE, right? So anyway, there are these companies that put their badge, their flavor, their skin on top of the open source solutions. And it adds value, absolutely. And so Streamlabs is one of those things, and Streamlabs has these like bots. They have these like little scroll bars. Like actually, I mean, if I was doing this regularly and I had a lot more subs, and please, anyone on there who's not subscribed to my YouTube channel, I would really appreciate if you did. Here's why. I don't need more subs. What I need though is I need 1,001 subs. Because if you don't know, if you're a YouTube creator and you have less than 1,000 subs, you basically can't do a bunch of stuff. Like, I don't have a community tab, so I can't communicate, there. I can't get analytics. I do not care about the revenue, because if I have like over 1,000, unless you've got 50,000 subs, you're not pulling in any revenue. And I have no desire to pull in revenue. There's no ads. At least I hope there's no ads. I only occasionally watch back some of my videos after I watched it like 4 times before I edit it, before I upload it. So I'm not quite sure whether there's ads injected, but I don't think there are any ads on my channel, on my videos, and I'm more than happy to keep it that way. It's a heck of a lot easier. It's a lot more fun. This is my hobby. Dozer, I'm a subscriber. Hey-o, thanks, buddy. Appreciate it. 7:45 is what I was at this morning. So, I add on average about 1 a day. So I'm figuring, in the next 3 months, then hopefully I'll hit 1,000. Exactly at the same time that the coronavirus is over and done with, and we are now back to happy, joyous, and free. And all you want to do is watch me walk down the beach and talk into my hand. So hopefully that's where we'll be at. So anyway, Eddie says, I'm doing show with when I'm temporarily expat again after virus. I'll translate to Thai. Ha ha ha. So Eddie actually has excellent diction, and he has the ability to conjugate verbs. The translation between his voice and or his, when you I can't remember what that's called, but instead of pushing the individual letters when you're typing something, he moves his finger around, and it auto-completes the word. So therefore the grammar is ridiculous. But anyway, basically what he's saying is he's going to do a show when he's back in Thailand. He and I always joke around and make silly videos and upload them and stuff, and so that'd be neat. I hope when Eddie comes back here, he and I do a show. That'd be neat to do. He's very talented. Oh my God! The guy he sings, he plays guitar. It's awesome. And anyway, so Eddie's the reason that I started coming to Thailand. So he's a really, really good friend. Mickey and Eddie. I've known Eddie for 27 years. And 10 months and 3 days. But who's counting? So he and I are in a really bitchin' club. I just scrolled back. So when I was telling you that story about Colette, I guess the list I gave her was 102, but who was counting, right? Were you like, oh my God, this loser boss of mine, he's setting me up to fail. I wonder if you ever thought that, because I have a tendency to give people as much as I believe they can handle, +1. I just have this default setting of, if we're going to hang out, which is really what occurs when you're a boss. You're hanging out, right, with your folks. You're sharing brain stuff. I'm learning every day, making mistakes every day. Setting boundaries, setting healthy boundaries. The guys in the team sort of, learn from it too. I will tell you that, if you've got a room full of men who at least half of them are single, then the chatter that occurs round the table can be a little bit inappropriate. And in fact, Colette and I were so efficient, we actually generated our own language. Because we were like, it's really silly to have to pronounce every single word. Like, if I say inappropriate, then you totally know that I mean inappropriate. But it took less time. So we had a level of inappropriate that was basically, we set our own boundaries. We set the stage for quality. So it was an opportunity to learn like hell. Mostly in the data center too, yeah. So it's funny. I remember when I hired her because of her vintage, because of her age, meaning the time in our lives that she entered the IT field. I'm like, there's a pretty good chance that you're not going to see a whole lot of inside of data center, because of course my fantasy is that everything is in the cloud. Everything should be available via the Chrome browser, as far as I'm concerned. The fact that I have to use OBS as a fat app, as we call it, as a download running on a Windows 10 machine, it is like fingernails on a chalkboard for me. I got to tell you, the cloud is so. Other people's computers are exactly where you should do everything. In fact, if you don't know, Colette, the way that I get to stream to Instagram, because obviously I don't do it with a phone, I do it with this thing, is I have to basically log in with this piece of software via the API that then generates the code that I can use, where I can do an RTMP stream to Instagram, clearly for only 1 hour, I use Media Live, AWS Media Live. And if it were up to me and OBS, I've tried to run OBS, in fact, on a server inside of AWS, a cloud server, but of course, then there's no video, right? You can share things through their virtual desktops, but you can't get video. You can get audio back and forth, but video won't show up. So it would be a lousy experience. Dozer says he works in technology too. Awesome, dude. What do you do? Colette and I, or certainly I won't speak for her, but I love speaking with technology about it. He just completed the Office 365 migration from on-prem to the cloud. Awesome. Absolutely have done that before, and it is a very rewarding experience, in my opinion. Did you have on-prem Exchange before you did it? Because that makes it a hell of a lot easier, especially if you had on-prem Exchange like I want to say by Exchange 2010, they had a little checkbox where you could say, hey, by the way, like, sync this to my Office 365 account. But then I think once 2012 and then 2016, I think they're at 2019 now for as far as I know, Exchange, then it's easy to do it. In security application startup tech now. Absolutely, yeah. So Colette, like many people, that started out her sort of career in higher education, moved to another higher education opportunity. That's actually really the only way. There's the succession plan in higher education is rarely like you start at the bottom and then you sort of work your way up. Maybe you get like one, and the rare occasion you get like 2 bumps up. But for the most part, the way you advance your career in higher education is you move to another school. So, and usually you do that by moving to another school that has more panache in their degree. So in other words, if I say, hey, I got my degree from Harvard, you have this judgment of that. If I say I got my degree from Humboldt State, then you have another one. But they both begin with H. Regardless, like her, I actually started out in radio, and then TV too for broadcast, but also stayed in that for a while, but then got out, and then I was doing like IT on my own, right? So I had an IT consulting company. I was doing streaming like this, but for other people, for radio stations, for TV stations, and then I had an ISP down in Mexico. So, yeah. So Dozer says they had an on-prem Exchange, but 80,000 employees. That's a lot. We had use cases that Microsoft, they had use cases that Microsoft never programmed. Yeah, I get that. I'm trying to think. We moved like 5,000 email boxes. We then later created 50,000, AD accounts up there, and then you would just sync it with on-prem. But and then Colette also mentions that, or you come back to higher ed when you're done with something else outside of higher ed. Yeah, that's also common too. And a lot of people will say, oh, they got burned out with the real world or whatever. I mean, it depends. I mean, you can label anyone's behavior negatively if you want to. I tend to try not to. And Dozer said he had Microsoft project engineers on every meeting he would have with them. Yeah, smart. Colette reminds me that we had 10,000. We moved up to Office 365, or maybe that's what she did. And guys, I do not know why this is my test timer response shows up there. I don't know whether I can delete that. I don't know whether I can delete individual messages. I don't think I can. But what I probably can do is I can probably log into Streamlabs and freaking stop that because it's annoying. So anyway, what else did I want to talk about? So here I am in Thailand, right? So it's April 1st. So basically, I got another month. So what they have said for state of emergency is, back on March 26th, when they announced the state of emergency, which again, that's just sort of a label on the state of what, the level of where you're at in the government, which then, if that's declared, it allows you to do certain things. So it allows the prime minister to make, decisions that normally he wouldn't be able to. Normally, for example, they can police officers can close a a facility if they believe they should. Like if all of a sudden, for whatever reason, there's notification that, hey, dude, in this one office, there's like 10 people that are infected. 2 of them are in the hospital with crazy pneumonia, and they're, getting ready to sadly pass away. Then they go over there and they say, okay, we're closing this building, and they don't get a warrant for that, right? And so, and trust me, I don't see them abusing it, in my opinion, over here. So let me go. So if I go to apps on Streamlab, then what I believe I can do is that I can get rid of the timer. Or the easiest thing to do, actually, is for me to just disconnect it. So hopefully I can do that, and that'll allow us to not have to see that anymore. I apologize for that. This is my test timer response. I get it. That's annoying. So anyway, it's April 1st now. And, oh, you know what's funny about April 1st? So last year, I was disliking my job. And so I posted on Facebook and a bunch of other social media networks how I was moving to Thailand. And then, some people were like, and then, at the end of it, April 1st, But what was interesting, I didn't expect this. I just figured, I'd do something coy on Facebook, and people would... The majority, like I'm talking 90% of the people that responded or had comments on Twitter or Facebook, they were like, oh, Mike, that's so great. That's awesome, man. Go for it. You're going to have an awesome time. You've been wanting to do this for a while. Nobody said, oh my God, what are you, an idiot? How could you possibly give up this kick-ass job you've got? And then and Colette says, years of threats. Yeah, well, I needed to get to the point where I wasn't going to commit financial suicide, Colette. So that's what I did. I saved up, as they say. Dozer says he canceled his June 1st flight to Thailand on EVA Air. Had to pay a $200 refund fee each, 3 tickets. Now, that's interesting. My experience with canceling EVA tickets is that, under normal circumstances. And the way that I've done it, I don't know if you did it this way, is you cancel the flight and then you go into the web page where it's like apply for refund, and then you copy and paste the ticket number, like that 12-digit, 16-digit number, in there, and then eventually they refund you that minus like the $200, depending upon what kind of ticket you bought. There is more to life than money. Absolutely, Ryan. I completely agree with that. But back to what Dozer was saying, I call them traditionally. Yeah, I got to wait on hold. Oh, well, you're back home. Sorry, you're back in the U.S., I believe. But over here in Thailand, I always call the Singapore number because their call center in Singapore is... their English is really good. I rarely call the Bangkok number that they give you, the 800 number, Every now and then I'll try and call the LA office, but at the end of the day, the offices that deal with cancellations, as you might guess, they're not open 24 hours a day. The numbers and the offices that allow you to pay them to book a flight 24 hours a day, those are always open. Dozer says that EVA was giving 100% refund for those flying on or before April 7th. That makes sense. I can understand why they would have done that. The reason I say that is because they announced, I believe, 1 week ago that they were canceling all flights. I don't know if that was globally. I think it's pretty close to globally. They're a Taiwanese airline, if you don't know. So a lot of times, you're routing through Taipei. And I think Taipei was like, no. Like, if you come in, you're staying for 14 days. You don't come in and cruise out, even if you're transiting. So I believe that's why. Living the dream knows no price. Absolutely, Ryan. I will say that because, as you guys know, if you're not living the dream, you're doing it wrong. And trust me, there's a lot of opportunity to do things right now. There's an awful lot of things you're powerless over, and you could label your life as going wrong. I completely agree. I mean, I would submit that the life you're living today, if I were to have talked to you back in November, this was not your plan for March. Okay? So I get that. But, again, there's a silver lining in a lot of things, not in everything, but in a lot of things. If you're just, if you basically just, one of the guys that as you were rolling the dice of life, you seem to get pneumonia, trust me, I'm not labeling you as doing that wrong. Do not interpret what I say as anything that I believe was your fault, okay? It's just sort of, at the end of the day, it's kind of a cute phrase, but it is something that I truly believe because I have not lived the dream. And if I were to look at the scenarios that were occurring in my life around me, the majority of them were my doing. It was me trying to take control of something I really couldn't control, like someone else's decision, or, you can't make someone do anything, right? I mean, you can try and influence them, but, and I was pissed off that people weren't doing things my way, which, of course, is the only child curse. And, yeah, so before April 7th, it just says he was afraid they will go out of business. Yeah, I mean, I get that. It's June, so, you've got the whole month of May where Thailand could arguably get ahead of the peak in curve. And you could argue, well, I can enter Thailand, let's say, on June 1st, but, I'm going to have to go. Their requirements are going to be, not exactly what a tourist experience would be. Meaning, they could continue and say, look, you have to have insurance. You have to have $100,000 of insurance, that's a significant Thai policy, by the way. I think my policy covers me for 3 million baht, and at the current exchange rate, that would be 3.3 million baht. And trust me, 3 million baht worth of medical coverage in Thailand is $100,000 of medical coverage in Thailand. That is an enormous amount, even at some of the best hospitals, like the top 3. It's expensive for Thailand, but it's not U.S. expensive. So yeah, I can understand why he was afraid they might go out of business. Dozer says, I'm able to enjoy my work and take a 30-day vacation every year. Dude, that is awesome. Colette and I absolutely were able to do very similar things. She was a different, structure in the org chart. So her compensation was different, meaning that like for every extra, she was hourly, right? So every extra hour that she worked, she made more money and earned a different amount of vacation. But for the administrators that were basically salary, meaning every hour we worked, believe it or not, the way they classified it, over 37 and a half hours a week, very bizarre number, but we effectively didn't get paid more. When your salary, whether you work, for most people, 40 hours a week or 49 hours a week, you get the same cash. But you also get a lot more flexibility. And in our university, we got 24 vacation days a year and approximately 10 holidays. The Mondays, Memorial Day, that sort of thing, July 4th, maybe plus or minus one day. And then after I had been working there probably about 5 years, the university said, you know what, we're going to close down the university the week of Christmas and the week of New Year's. It wasn't always a full 2 weeks. There was maybe we'd have to go to work on Monday and then Tuesday through the next. But yeah, absolutely. I could easily, I have done 30 days in a row away from the office. I think twice, because that would have been 6 weeks. I think I've been gone 6 weeks before twice. And so that's awesome, dude. That's really awesome. I thought I shut it off. Sorry. He's still able to do that in a startup. Dude, that is, or rather, Colette says she's still able to do that in the startup. That's fantastic. Yeah. I mean, the cool thing about startups, right, is when they start out the culture, because I would absolutely do that. I mean, in our organization, trust me, that is our, that as our employee manual begins, right, because it's me and my buddy Ed and then this one 1099 employee that basically is Ed's assistant and helps out the organization too. That's one of our, I'll tell you, if for nothing else, and I've totally stolen this and I give them credit every time I do, but at the end of the day, the way that it works in our organization is we are ladies and gentlemen serving ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Ritz-Carlton experience. And I absolutely adore that. We are ladies and gentlemen serving ladies and gentlemen. And the way that they always began every meeting, like when they have a stand-up meeting or a weekly meeting or a monthly meeting, whoever was addressing the people, they would say, okay, ladies and gentlemen, And, if you were to say that in most businesses, like if I were to have done that in front of my guys, they would have been like, okay, yeah, that's cute. Like ladies and germs or something. But like, no, they mean it. Ladies and gentlemen serving ladies and gentlemen. One of the best culture labels, taglines I've ever heard. I love it. Dozer says he has 7 weeks, not including major holidays. So yeah, a lot of times you can pad it before and after, right? So like you can say, okay, well, I'm going to take 30 of my vacation days. I'm going to take my full 7 weeks after Christmas, because like maybe you got the holiday of the 24th and 25th off. So yeah, you can really add it up. That's totally fantastic. Colette says she's almost SMB now, but still startup in a lot of ways. Yeah, I would submit that you say it's not a small to medium because you've still got the culture of flexibility. You're nimble. I know that they got funding, so congratulations on that, by the way. That's outstanding. And certainly right now, trust me, it's a lot easier, or it's a lot more difficult to get people to give you money in their belief that your idea is so excellent that they will get, at least all of their money back. They'll get at least a 1x return, hopefully. If not, they lose everything. And if they're a full-on angel, then they absolutely are like 10x, baby. If I'm a vulture capitalist, not necessarily a venture capitalist, but if I'm a vulture capitalist, I want 10x. But I'm also mature and smart enough to realize that with that vultureness comes the ability to accept the fact that 80% of my gambles will not work. So that's really good. So Streamlabs. I got to turn off my silly, I believe it's in alert boxes. If any of you guys own Streamlabs, I know when Jonathan was on here, Ryan, he was helping me with some things that was occurring in OBS. He helped me add the chat box, actually, which was really cool. So I need to figure out where my general settings are and where that timer is. Technology for the last 15 years, Dzozerd. Awesome, man. He said he had a job in Bangkok last year that a good friend, from a good friend, had a job offer, from Bangkok, from a good friend that didn't take it. Actuarial work that I did 15 years ago, so wasn't interested. Totally, dude. I totally get that. I mean, at the end of the day, I could start, run, and make profitable a radio station today. Anywhere in the world, I know 100% of how it's done from beginning to end, from the day you apply for the license to the day you buy your first mouse, the software you buy, all of the engineering that is necessary, how to sell, how to influence, how to promote, how to market, how to be wildly successful. But I don't want to do that anymore. This is the maximum amount of radioing that I want to do. It's kind of weird having that behind my head, isn't it? Yeah. So I put this green screen up behind me once, right? And and in many condos, and certainly in this one, you'll sign something that says, "Look, I'm not going to like bust a hole through the wall. I'm not going to repaint." For example, in this one, because I thought, well, maybe we should repaint. She says, "No, you can't do that." Okay, fine. Don't attach anything to the walls, and that's actually a fair request here by a landlord because all the walls are concrete. They're and they're very thick, well made. Thank God. Concrete, so I can't just throw a nail up there and say, oh look, a big poster. No, so I was using duct tape on the walls, and the duct tape was not connecting to the screen. Where is that coming from? Where is my test timer? I don't know where that exists. I'm also unclear why it's doing that. Like, I don't necessarily know. I know that one of the things that I had to do is I had to connect my Streamlabs account to I think that's where it is. If I go to shared, account settings, integrations. Yeah, okay. So let me unlink it with YouTube. Let me unlink it with Twitch. Let me unlink it with Mixer. Not that any of you guys are really paying attention on Mixer. But that's the Streamlabs one, anyway, with any luck, this will be gone in a second. So I apologize and thank you for your patience as I fix stuff via the web as I dump my cloud connections. And so, I can totally understand. You're like, look, dude, this is what I want to do. This is what I want to do for my life, and I can make money at it, right? I mean, it's not like you're like, oh, yeah, I'm doing technology instead of actuarial work because, there's a whole lot less money to be made in IT. No. You probably, I mean, there's steady money as an actuary. I would submit, there's need for that. I mean, any insurance company in the world will need you, right? But one could argue that it might not necessarily be as mentally stimulating as you might like. That is my opinion of it. I know nothing of the actuary field. I know that you need to basically be really good at math. I had a girlfriend, God, how many years ago? Oh boy, that was when I was in St. Louis. But she was getting a math degree, and she wanted to be an actuary. And I was like, do you now? Okay, well, your level of excitement differs from mine. She's also an ex-girlfriend. Not for that reason, trust me. So anyway, well, I unlinked it from the other one. So if anything, only the thing that'll happen right now is this is my test timer response will only come up as the YouTube chat. However, I do kind of want to figure out why the heck this is part of it. So if I go to CloudBot and then I go to timer, you do not have any timers, and I do have a timer, and I delete it, and then I confirm the deletion of my timer. So thank you for walking me through that. Thank you for joining me along my walk through trying to reconfigure my timer. Yes, it was as annoying for me as it was for you. With this chat, actually, that I have from Restream, unfortunately, I can't. It doesn't look like I can delete individual chats, which is too bad. I mean, it's too bad you can't sort of monitor it. But so I completely agree. You know what I also agree with is the statement that many of you heard, probably in different forms, which is, if you're doing what you love, it's not work, right? And boy, I'll tell you, of all the countries that I go to, I would submit that the U.S. and maybe like 5 or 6 of the other overdeveloped countries in the world really gives you the opportunity to do that. There's not a whole lot of countries where as many people that can do it in the U.S. can do it in other countries, do exactly what they want to do. The other thing that really hit me in the face when I started traveling internationally was the belief system of success. I grew up pretty much believing, and not just because my parents were like, oh yeah, Michael, you can do anything, you can do it. No, it was what was around me. It's what I saw on TV. It's what I read in the Wall Street Journal. It's what I read in the local newspaper. If you have the correct and the right number of resources, you can do anything, right? Do anything you want to. I mean, you have to have sort of realistic expectations. I am not going to be a world-class NBA player if for no other reason than A, I don't have any interest in it, and secondly, I'm not an athlete in general. And so, that's not something that I want to do. But, there's not a whole lot of guys starting a online website where you can exchange money from point A to point B that become almost billionaires that then take all of that money and say, I'm going to start a rocket company. I'm going to start an electric car company that will be synonymous globally with the word electric car or self-driving car. Tesla is the electric car. And it is the Apple iPhone of electric cars. If you have money and you want to make sure a lot of people know it, you buy a Tesla, especially in other countries over here. If you are in Thailand, it's not necessarily a Tesla, it's more of a Mercedes, the Mercedes-Benz car, simply because the royal family drives Mercedes-Benz, and so there's sort of that carrot that you have there, based on respect, based on love for the royal family, but based on also, status and that sort of thing too. Whereas in Hong Kong, I found that the majority of people, there were plenty of Teslas in Hong Kong and Singapore. There weren't as many in Singapore. But I found that people that wanted to sort of show off their success and their wealth, and not necessarily the whole reason. BMWs, 5 and 7 Series. If you had a 7 Series BMW in Hong Kong, dude, you were wealthy. And Dozier says, we used to argue about dime or dollar rounding, whether to do an additive or multiplicative. Yeah. I'm sure that I am so grateful that I have enough brains to be able to say, I believe you have the skill set I need to help me with that. I don't have the ability to do that. And trust me, it's not like an electrical engineering bachelor's degree doesn't involve math. I took plenty of math. I think I went up to Calc 5, and then, of course, after that, there's applied ordinal differential equations. Trigonometry that is nothing like the trigonometry that most people do. A lot of math, a lot of repetitive problems. And you got to at least like it, or at least tolerate it. If you like it, then that actually gives you a really good, heads up, because then you're able to basically stick through doing all of the problems that you need to do, because it's a lot of work. There's a lot of work to becoming an engineer, any kind of engineer. But I did the electrical version, and it was one of my professors who was brilliant, who, if anyone complained basically about getting less than an A-, his response was, I have no sympathy. He's like, I gave you all the information. We went through exactly enough information, more than enough information, that you needed to master, to repeat it and regurgitate it back to me on this exam to prove to me that you understood what I put out there. I gave you enough to get an A on this exam. And if you didn't do that, well, then I have no sympathy. And his name was Professor Shane, and we called him No Sympathy Shane. The other thing that he used to say was, he would like be starting, and he would pause, and he would look up at the thing. It was on a chalkboard, none of this whiteboard stuff yet. There were whiteboards for sure, but it was mainly this guy, chalkboards too. And he would like pause, and then after a while, you knew he was going to say, okay, this is going to be reasonably challenging. And I would be like, the whole class would just, great. If the guy who has a PhD in circuitry, because we were going through sort of pretty complex circuits, and at the end of the day, if you were to follow the lines of a schematic around the way sort of the current flows in an electrical circuit, it's a constant differential equation, right? So, regardless, that's oversimplification of what a electrical circuit and why math is so important. Because the behavior that you sort of are able to determine of each of the components along the way is a differential equation. So anyway, that's a little bit of my past. And yours? Was yours as exciting as mine and Dozer's? So anyway, so here we are on April 1st, and the next month is going to involve me being indoors for the majority of my days, as well as the majority of my day. I do go out on the balcony. The pigeon cam I actually don't have out today because I'm drying my clothes. So that's taking up the real estate out there. But so today, actually, of the 37 days of state of emergency, meaning they announced it on March 26th, and it is scheduled to go to April 30th. So today is, let's see, today is day 6. Today is day 6 of 37. So I got 31 more days to go, basically, which is all of the days in April. And that will be, ideally, the longest we have to go. I'm not completely sure. I'm not completely certain. So that's interesting. So Rick, actually, he's a buddy of mine. It doesn't show up on the chat there because he direct messaged me, but he says, Thailand, I assume, is expecting an announcement saying things will remain closed. Technically, things are only are open again today. Have you heard? I have not heard that, Rick. He says that he's experiencing a new announcement regarding closures, etc. Day number 2, things open back up again. Doubtful. Have you heard latest government restrictions? Not sure. I sent the first message. Okay. So yeah. So again, I don't get I get notifications from media outlets basically, as well as from the State Department. So that's what I know. I also know that I also can just share my experience. Yesterday, when I went out, I went downstairs to get some packages that I had delivered, which is the majority of the way that I get stuff. Like it's either via Lazada or whatever. And so Ricky brings an interesting perspective. Rick's actually down in Pattaya, I believe. At least that's where I know him to be. I could be wrong. But the point is, he may be actually up in the province. I can't remember whether he went way out into the village. I believe he sent a message to me saying he was considering that, but that was several weeks ago. So the Pattaya experience. Anyway, my experience is I went downstairs, and in our lobby we have a guard that, he's got a cute little outfit. He doesn't have like a machete or anything. He's not an armed guard, but he's a guard, and we respect him. I respect him. And he's at a table, and he's got one of those, guns that you point at the forehead. And then he has little dots that they basically put on your shirt, provided that when they take your temperature, it is below 37.4, meaning the external temperature. Mine has been about 36.3, 36.4. Then they give you that dot, which basically means you are not showing symptoms of temperature. And therefore you can walk in and out of the building. They check you as you come in and out of the building. So I got that done, and I thought, okay, cool. So then I walked outside. I went over to the 7-Eleven that's part of my complex. I walked across the street and down the street, and I went to another 7-Eleven. I walked across the street and down the street and went to a Tops Daily, which is simply like a mini grocery store. And or actually, it's about the size of a large 7-Eleven in the U.S. How's that? Because the 7-Elevens are here pretty tiny, but they're just everywhere. They're literally every 100 meters. But Tops had, some lines in it. There were like 3 or 4 people in front of the registers, which is really busy for that place, by the way. The parking lot was almost full. There were like 1 or 2 car spots available, and about probably 75% of the motorbike parking was taken up. So it was busy. But I was able to go out. I would have been able to go out and walk down the street all the way to Sukhumvit. I know that the government is imposing big-time limitations on public transit. So buses and, in Thailand here, the BTS. In Bangkok specifically, the BTS. Dozer says, my Thai wife said people went back to their hometowns and spread it more. Yeah, I heard that a lot. I heard that before any of this was occurring, and especially the people that were working in industries here where they're like, look, dude, we're shutting it down. So, for example, if you work at a massage shop, or you work at a nail shop, or you work at these sort of, get paid daily, and that's the amount of money that I have, yeah, I'll save a little bit. But for the most part, my daily wage is my daily spending. And Dozer says his wife reads all the Thai language websites. Yeah, that would be amazing. I don't know if all of you people they're on the stream or watching afterwards or whatever, have ever looked at Thai writing, but I think most of us know that it's squiggle. So just the letters, it's just impossible. And I've said this before, but it is a really interesting experience because I pause and I'm like, I'm illiterate. Like, I do not know what that word says. I cannot read. And I remember maybe the first time I heard the word illiterate, when I was like in grade school or something. And, it was maybe used to describe, oh yeah, that person's illiterate. That person can't read. Usually to someone who is, fallen on hard times, really poor kind of thing. Sanskrit. Script. And obviously there's also more consonants. There's more. I believe that there is the number of consonants in the Thai language that there are the number of letters in the Roman sort of language, right? So English, if you will, meaning in English, the English that we sort of all agree on is 26 letters in total, and then Spanish. There's I think there's like 29, right? Because there's CH, there's double L, there's Enye. And I'm trying to think. So maybe 30, but 46 consonants. Isn't that right, Dozer? 46 consonants and 26 vowels. I can't remember. I know that it's significant. You're right. It might be 46 in total. and then there's like 10 of them are vowels or whatever. Anyway, you could Google it, but the point is that I got a blinding flash of humility when when I moved over here, because I moved over here and I went down to Cha Am, which is a very Thai vacation beach city. So all the signs are in Thai. There's like occasionally a sign in English. The menus, the majority of the way that Gracie and I would order food was pointing to the picture, not reading it. We would point to the picture, and then the waiter or waitress, usually the waitress, would write down the order in Thai. And I'd be like, oh my God. I mean, I don't know. I almost look at it and say, God, you're so much smarter than I am, that you can like write that way, that you can write these, you can write in squiggle. And all I know how to do with, expertise is speak and write in English. That's all I got. And you can speak some English, we can communicate. You can read and write English, and you can read and write Thai. It's like, wow. I don't know. It's impressive to me. Dozer says he never learned to write Thai, and he's not good at speaking it too. Yeah, I'm not good at it either, and the more that I stay inside by myself and not go outdoors, the worse my Thai gets. One of the nice things about having my business when I was in Mexico is that I would actually go down to San Felipe, where the headquarters was, basically. After about day 3, day 2, day 3, my Spanish would get really good, especially if I wanted to, get to know people, or I wanted to hire somebody, because, you need to get kind of clear on, hey, I'm going to pay you money. In exchange, these are the things I want you to do. And, lost in translation is not a phrase we all, we've heard that before. That's a very common one. And the reason there's that common phrase is because if you don't agree in the same language, be it diction or be it handwriting or whatever, then yeah, Thais speak in sentences. The other thing that's very interesting about Thai writing, if you've ever seen it, in English, right, the space bar on your keyboard, you type a word, space, another word, space, and you string those together, and then you put a period at the end, and that's your sentence. Here, there is no space. There is constant letters until the end of the sentence. That is amazing. So every now and then when I see a Thai person like reading Thai and they're going, and it takes them a while to like read it, I'm like, I know exactly why that's happening. You guys really need to adopt the space bar, bro. I mean, it would change your life. The context changes with different word groups, absolutely, yeah, and then it's very tonal, that sort of thing. But anyway, Thai is fascinating to me. So I don't think I'm going to get better at that, sadly, by doing it here indoors, because I don't have the discipline or the desire, really, to like learn it online or use various other ways of learning it. It's not interesting to me. Conversing with other people in Thai and learning a new word every day, or learning how to conjugate something or whatever, or that I like. That I really, really like. And oh, cool. So one of my buddies, he just sent me a Zoom meeting for a meeting that's coming up, which is awesome. I'll tell you what, I mean, yes, I bought the stock too, but Zoom.us, they are, as is Skype, they are killing it. More people, I think, are using Zoom now than use, I don't want to say chat apps. They probably use it with the same frequency in many cases, meaning they use it once a day and they use it to converse with a large number of people. Obviously, WhatsApp, I believe, is the number one in the world. A very close second, I would submit, is probably WeChat. It is hugely popular in China. If you meet a Chinese person, you get their WeChat. That's immediately what you do. So that's those are very popular. So again, I don't think Zoom's going to be that popular. They don't have that many subscribers. But man, I mean, yeah, their stock is one of the few that's been going up. As is Microsoft with their Teams. Apparently, there's a bunch of Teams meetings that go on. And I can tell you, I've been on the sort of government, if you will, websites where you're applying for, part of this CARES package, right? So if you're applying for the PPP, which is the payroll protection plan, right? If you want to keep if you're going to agree to keep your employees employed, then they're willing to pay for their salary between, I want to say, February 15th, 8 weeks. So that would be May 30th. I think it's February 15th through May 30th. They're willing to pay for, the government is willing to pay for via a loan that is 100% forgivable and interest-free, provided you continue to pay those employees through the remainder of 2020. That's part of this $2.2 trillion. There's also a lot of other things that are available as part of the bucket of $2.2 trillion. Line is definitely used in Asia. Probably the first chat app that I ever installed, I think it was on day 2 here in Thailand, and that was in about so it was like December 2012, or maybe 2013, I can't remember, but I remember sitting down with a person I just met, and she's like, oh, do you have Line? And of course, when you first hear that for the first time and you don't know it's a communication app, you're like, do I have Line? And I immediately thought, okay, is that her using her English, her broken English, and she's asking me if I'm online? So I'm like, yeah, I'm online, right? She's like, good, and she like whips out her phone and says, okay, here's my QR code. And I'm going, okay, so do I scan this and go to her website? Like, what am I doing? She's like, no, dude, Line app, which is out of Japan, I believe. But it's a very popular communication app here in Thailand for sure. It's not as popular in the Philippines, and it's not as popular in China because it's a Japanese app. It's also not as popular in South Korea because it's not Korean. And so, for the life of me, I can't remember the really popular chat app in South Korea. Is it Kik? I can't remember. Dozer, good to see you, man. Thanks a lot. I really appreciate it. He has got to go. Definitely had a good chat. Honored you came by. Teams is Skype and SharePoint combined. Absolutely, yeah, totally agree with that. I don't particularly like Teams. I find Zoom to work absolutely everywhere. It works on my phone. It works on the app. It works in a web page in my phone. It works on a web page in my browser. It works on the app that I download. It works on my Chromebook. It works everywhere. It has excellent video quality, excellent audio quality, even when there was I was on a meeting yesterday, and it was like the Brady Bunch times 5. So it was basically 15 guys on one page. No, I'm sorry, 20 guys, because it was 5x4. No. Anyway, it was like one page of let's say 12, and then you went to the right, hit the arrow, and there was another 10 guys. So I mean, it was excellent. There was no jitter, there was no audio cutting out. Very impressed with Zoom, and I've been using it in business for a long time. And I don't even know if I have a paid subscription, but I believe with the free subscription you can do up to 45 minutes for more than 3 people. So if you're going to have more than 3 people, then you need to get a if you're going to have an hour meeting, then you definitely need to get a paid subscription, which it's very reasonable considering what it allows us to do globally, right? So anyway, yeah, so basically I'm here till April 30th. So welcome to April 1st. Welcome to April Fool's Day in Thailand. I'm going to cut it off here. It's been 2 hours. I am honored that you came by. Please subscribe if you haven't to my YouTube channel, youtube.com/livemyassoff, or go to the website livemyassoff.com. Follow the blog, follow the videos. I'll be doing another live show here, ideally with as much interaction as this. I'm honored that you guys want to chat. It's a great. It really selfishly too. It's really helpful for me because I'm here by myself, and I can chat with Gracie, because we chat every day, all day long, but she's still not here. So I need something to keep me busy, and a lot of that's doing the stuff online, but a lot of it is doing this chat. So, Colette, love you, sweetie. You're awesome. Absolutely, sis. You're the best. Glad that your life is just exceptional in Chicago. Stay warm. So, WhatsApp in Korea. I can't remember, Brian. I thought it was Kik or something. But anyway, to all of you guys that came by, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. It's Mike's from livemyassoff.com saying, I hope you're living the dream. With all that's going on around you right now, focus on what you can do and what you believe you can do successfully. Work on having one win a day, whether it's a little win or a big win. And trust me, every now and then when you put your head on the pillow or look at yourself in the mirror at night, you'll be saying, wow, I'm living the dream. I get to go to sleep today in this house. I get to pay my taxes. I get to wake up in the morning and hopefully tell someone else you love them. Talk to you soon. Ciao.